Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming today. My name is Quinn Wisson from Vertical Measures, and I am here hosting our monthly webinar series. If you aren't familiar with us, we are a full-service internet marketing agency in sunny Phoenix, Arizona, and we do SEO, PPC, and content marketing for our clients. Today's webinar is titled How to Conquer the Content Marketing Trough of Disillusionment, and will be presented by Mike Huber. Mike is our very own Senior Director of Strategy and Education here at Vertical Measures. He has over 20 years experience in marketing and advertising and actually started out in newspaper advertising and has seen the complete shift and transformation of print to digital. He's an accomplished public speaker and he teaches a lot of our workshops around the country as well. I have just a couple of notes before I hand it off to Mike. Today's webinar will be available for viewing by tomorrow, and everyone will get an email from us in the morning tomorrow with a link to the recording as well as the slides, so you can review it then. We'll also be happy to answer any of your questions. So if you take a peek at your webinar interface, you'll see a little question applet where you can send anything you'd like me to ask Mike after his presentation. Or you could tweet along with us and ask questions that way. And we're using a hashtag today. It is VMWebinar. If you have any technical problems, feel free to let me know, but usually just signing off and signing back on fixes the issue. I think those are all the notes I have. So I'm going to hand it off to our special presenter today, Mike Huber.
Hi everyone, Mike here. Thank you for joining us today. Actually, today I want to talk to you about some lessons that we've learned as a content marketing agency over the past few years. Content marketing has evolved, and we're in a much different place today than, say, 3 to 4 years ago. And on this next slide, it helps illustrate where we are today. This is actually Gartner's 5-step hype cycle, and the graph shows, actually it's a technology focused, but it actually works for content marketing as well. So what happens is when something is new on the left-hand side, this technology trigger, things start to escalate and there's a peak of inflated expectations. So people are really interested in something and things start to grow and people start to gravitate towards a concept or a technology. And where I think we are today in content marketing is we've reached that peak. We're actually starting to drop down to this trough of disillusionment. And to illustrate that, one of the things that we do when we go out and do our content marketing workshops, which we've done for a number of years, is we would ask our participants to hold up their hands for all of the people that are involved in content marketing. And when we first started doing the workshops, very few people raised their hands. But in the last 6 months to 8 months, when we asked that question, almost everyone in the audience holds up their hand. So there's a lot of people who are really involved now with content marketing. But when we ask that question, we also ask a second follow-up question. And we ask people to keep their hands in the air for all of the people that feel they're being very successful with content marketing and they're getting an ROI on their resources that they're dedicating to content marketing. And what happens at that point is almost all of the hands in the room go down. So we know that people are involved in it, but we also know that they're starting to go through this trough of disillusionment. And one of the things that we learned early on as an agency when we were trying to get people involved in content marketing, we would actually engage with them on a 30, 60, or 90-day content marketing creation campaign. And what we discovered is that in 100% of those cases, we failed. And simply because we know that content marketing is a long-term strategy and it is not a campaign. And to further illustrate this, we actually came up with this graphic. We call it the emotional journey of content marketing. And the teal color, the turquoise color, is actually this journey, this emotional journey. And we start on the left-hand side, where oftentimes when you get started with content marketing, you think, wow, this is the best idea ever, and we're going to be really successful at it. You find that you're learning a lot about content marketing and how to deploy great content. But then what happens is you realize that, hey, this is really hard work. And then it's like, man, this stinks because we really don't have a handle on what we're doing. We have no idea what it is that we're going to need to do to be successful. And at some point, you start to feel overwhelmed. And then when you're in the bottom of this trough of disillusionment, you're actually looking at each other and thinking to yourself, who can we blame this on? But then what happens is things start getting a little bit better. You start to get more and more involved. Your content is better. You're starting to gain traction. You're actually seeing traffic and leads. And you're starting to get results from content marketing until finally you realize that what you were doing was well worth it. And then in the orange box there, this is our belief and persistence. And these are the things that I'm going to talk about in the next few slides. And the way that we have it set up is kind of like a Letterman top 10, except that there's only 8, and they're really not funny. They're about lessons learned. And hopefully, as I talk to you about these, you can avoid some of the problems that we've had as an agency with our own content and also with clients that we've had early on in this content marketing program and focus. So one of the things that we see is that if your executive team is not leading the way, it's problematic. And the executive team can do a lot for you. They can clear out the log jams and the roadblocks. They can get sales and marketing and IT all together on the same page. And if you have the C-suite helping you, it's really going to help all of your efforts in content marketing. And when we see that the C-suite is not involved, our content marketing campaigns run into some problems. And really what happens is they're spending resources on content marketing, and in the first few months, they're not seeing this instant gratification and these instant results. And as people are spending money and not seeing an ROI, and the C-suite is not involved in that, oftentimes those funds are pulled back because they're not seeing results. So early on, you want buy-in from the C-suite, again, because they can help you get rid of the roadblocks that are along the way. What we realize, too, is that content marketing actually has to become part and parcel of what your business is. It's actually building a culture of content within your company. And I want to read this definition of content marketing. And it's interesting, this is actually a photograph of our lobby at Vertical Measures at our office in Phoenix. And we just moved into these offices about 6 months ago, and this is on the wall for all of our visitors and all of our employees to see as they walk by every day. And I just want to give you this definition so you have an understanding and a little bit of a common vocabulary about what we think content marketing is. So it's the art of providing relevant, useful content to your customers without selling or interrupting them. And instead of pitching your products or services, you're actually delivering information that makes your customers more informed before they buy. And a couple of key points in this is that you're not selling or interrupting them, and you're informing them. So when people are online, they're trying to answer questions, they're trying to solve problems, and they're trying to understand more about products and services before they buy them. And that's really what content marketing is all about. Because it's not a campaign, it's not a tactic, or it's not a strategy. It's really building that culture within your company, because all of the things that happen in the daily course of business could become a content moment, and it could be something that you write content in and around. Another thing that we see is not creating most of your own content becomes problematic. And what we know is that you know more about your business than anyone else. And as a content marketing agency, we actually create content for a lot of our clients, but that's not our emphasis. Our emphasis is on supporting our clients in their creation of their own content, because we know that they can write content better than we can because they're closer to it, they're closer to their customers and their products and their services. So not creating most of your own content is actually one of the lessons that we learned. You should be creating most of your content. And some other things along that line is get your team to contribute. Because if you're all in on content marketing, you really need to have your team members contributing to that content effort. And again, you are the subject matter experts. You know your business better than anyone. And is content marketing a priority at your company? If you're all in on content marketing, it's a must. You've got to make this a priority internally. Another thing that we discovered too is that what gets rewarded gets repeated. So if you have people contributing content to your website, make sure there's a reward involved in that. At Vertical Measures, we actually have a spiff that we give people who write content. It's not a lot of money, but it's enough of an incentive for them to continue to write content that we actually put on our websites. And you also need to make it easy for the team to share that content. We actually send out an email when content is published on our website. We have what we call lazy tweets. It makes it really easy for all of our team members to share in their social media channels. And then the last thing here is that make sure that you're sharing the results and you're celebrating milestones. So the word gets out that the content is actually working and you're getting traction and you're getting visits from your content. Make sure that you're sharing those results and make sure that the C-suite knows so they can continue to support your efforts. Another thing that we see, and is one of the lessons that we learned, is using the wrong kind of strategy. About 18 months ago, actually really almost about 2 years ago, we changed the way that we deliver content marketing strategies. In the past, what we would do is a very detailed, well-researched document that generally was about an inch deep that we would deliver to our clients. And if you printed that out, it would thunk on the desk. And what we discovered is that although the information in the strategy was awesome, our clients would read it and then they would file it away in a filing cabinet, never to be seen again. And when you have a strategy that you're not following and you're not using on a daily or regular basis, you're not as effective and efficient as you can be. So the way that we changed our delivery of this content strategy is we do it now in an agile way. And what I mean by that is we kind of chunk it out over time. So we still deliver all of that really great research and detailed information and solid strategies, but we start to implement that along with creating content. And what we've discovered is it becomes a more live document that people use and go by on a regular basis, but it also allows us to learn quickly about what's working and what isn't. So we can make quick course adjustments, we can do iteration, and the learnings that we have along the way are very valuable because it makes us a lot more effective as we roll that strategy out. And I want to tell you a little bit about how we work with our clients today, and this is not to sell you, but it's just a way to illustrate how an effective content marketing strategy can roll out and work within your company. One of the first things we do is a content marketing workshop. And what we've discovered is if we teach people about what the definition of content marketing is, the process and methodology that we've been using over the last 6 or 7 years, it actually gets people on the same page. So they have a common vocabulary about what content marketing is, and they really understand the processes around it. Again, using an agile strategy and deep ideation, which I'll talk about ideation in one of my further slides. We teach writing skills. We use what we call a hub and spoke model, and I'll describe that in just a second. We also optimize content. We spend a lot of time on SEO. We also promote content because we know that when you produce content, oftentimes it's not found on your site. It's found through promotional channels. And then we make sure to set up lead nurturing. And one of the things that's most important is we measure. We start with baselines. We create the key performance indicators, and then we measure those over time because those are the indicators that show when and how quickly we're being successful. And in terms of hub and spoke, this illustration on the right-hand side, in the middle is the hub. And typically a hub for us is a free guide. It could be a case study. Really what it's all about is this complex piece of content that we generally put behind a gate, so there's a lead capture form. So the user has to trade an email address to actually download this really rich, nice piece of content. And then to support that, we do blogs and newsletters, we do a press release, off-site articles, all with the intention of alerting our audience that there's this hub piece of content that they can download. So this has worked out really well for us, and typically what we'll do is produce a hub piece of content on a quarterly basis. And we actually treat this like a new product launch because we do press releases and we support it in a lot of ways. And those folks that are around that hub, oftentimes those are created by repurposing some of the information that's within that hub piece of content. So it's not always new content that are the spokes. It could be some of the content that we produced in the hub itself. One of the other things that we see is problematic is people fail to amplify their content. And you're probably familiar with the photograph there with Kevin Costner in the movie The Field of Dreams. And they said, if you build it, they will come. And that's not necessarily true. And really what happens now is the last place people generally find brand new content is not on your website. It's through some promotional channel, whether it be social media or paid. And if you think about it, there's so much content being produced now, it's really hard to break through that clutter through SEO or through organic. So oftentimes you need to kickstart people seeing that content through promotional means. And if you think about the way that content marketing has progressed over time, when we first started doing content marketing, our resource was 100% on creating the actual piece of content. So in the old days, to say it that way, we thought that generating this awesome piece of content would be enough. But what we've discovered in the lessons that we've learned over time is that you have to take part of that content creation budget and use it for promotion. So it's not 100% that we're spending on the content creation in and of itself. We're actually dedicating some of those dollars to promotion and distribution because we know we need to get eyeballs to that content. And some of the ways that you can do that are simply using Google, Google Ads, Facebook, Bing, Outbrain, Reddit, a lot of different channels. And the channels that you use are going to be dictated by the kind of business that you're in and the products and services that you deliver. So you want to test some of these, but get the word out on your content because you need to amplify it simply because the space is so crowded, and it's really the only way to kind of kickstart people seeing your content right away. So if you build it, they might come if you spend some time on organic and building links back to your content, sharing in social media channels. If you use influencer marketing, reaching out to people who are influential in your space, and then also in distributing your content. And what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, your content is a slide deck. You could actually post that on slideshare.net. So what you're doing in that case is you're taking your content to another audience. Another good way to do that is to use LinkedIn to publish content there. You can also go the paid route, and the paid route is PPC, actually reaching out to influencers, in some cases paying them to get the word out, and then also on press releases. And as I mentioned earlier, we treat that hub piece of content like a new product launch, so we're always doing a press release when we do that complex piece of content. Another thing that we see is that lead nurture is an afterthought. And this is really surprising for us because if you've done all the heavy lifting and done all the hard work by creating this really great content and you've promoted it and you've gotten traffic and you've gotten leads and everything is working the way it should, and then you stop there and you don't lead nurture those people that have come to the site. So we think this is an important thing, and we often see this as a problem when we talk to our clients because they've done everything right except for that lead nurture. And lead nurture is really important because it can help keep people moving through that buyer's journey and down your sales funnel. And one of the things that we've discovered too through some of the studies and surveys that we've seen is that you can reach out in lead nurture 7 times, and within those 7 times the conversion rates continue to go up. So that outreach, that continual relationship building and giving information to potential clients is helpful up to that 7th time. The 8th and 9th and 10th time, those conversion rates start to drop off. But lead nurture is an important part of content marketing, and it can really help you in terms of building your sales and generating a lot more revenue. And it's easy to do. There are a lot of programs out there that will help you do lead nurture. Some of the things are free to a certain degree. MailChimp, Emma. One of the things that we use is HubSpot. We're a HubSpot agency, so we actually use that on the Vertical Measures site, and it helps us with our marketing qualified and sales qualified leads. We're able to actually send out different emails to people who go to different parts of the site and who download different pieces of content. So you can get really specific and create patterns and triggers and traffic of emails that go out to people who do particular things on your website. So be thinking about lead nurture because it can really help increase the number of sales that you make after you bring someone to your website. Another thing that we see too is lack of optimization. And one of the things that we have as a saying around Vertical Measures is the best place to hide a dead body is on the page 2 of Google search results. And really, if you break that down, what happens is Google sends tons of traffic to websites, but of that traffic that they send, 92% of it is from people clicking on the organic search results from that page 1 of search results. And on the right-hand side, that graphic, that dotted line, everything to the right of that dotted line is page 2 of search results. So you can see the lion's share of all of the traffic, especially that first position in organic, gets most of the clicks to websites. So really what you want to do is in every way try to get your content on your keywords on that first page of Google search results. A couple other statistics that support that is over 90% of consumers are doing a search online before they make a purchase. And this is especially true if they're making a significant purchase. So over 9 out of 10 people are searching online, and 86% of those searchers are actually conducting non-branded searches. And what I mean by that is they're in the top of the sales funnel. They're just starting to do research. They haven't decided that it's going to be a Toyota or a Lexus or a Sanyo or a Vizio. They're way ahead of that in terms of what they need for information before they actually do a branded search. And then finally, still over 90% of buyers click on organic links versus the paid or sponsored links in the search results pages. So people are still trusting organic first before they click on the paid ads. So this really reinforces the fact that you need to try in as many ways as possible to optimize your content. And some of the most common SEO problems that we see are, first of all, unintentional duplicate content. And this is especially true with our clients that have WordPress sites. And if you're using WordPress and doing tags in categories, oftentimes you'll have 2 or 3 instances of the same content that are indexed in Google. And when that happens, Google is looking at those 2 or 3 pages and saying, which one of these is the priority, which one of these is the most important page. They get confused. And what happens when you confuse Google is you lose. So make sure that you don't have duplicate content on your pages. Another thing to look at is page load speed. Page load speed became a ranking factor in April of 2015. And if you think of Google as a search engine, what they're trying to provide for their customers is a great experience. So the websites that they're listing in the organic rankings are going to be sites that load quickly, because if you click off of the search results page onto a website and it loads really slowly, that experience is detrimental. What you want is a really quick load so you have a really good experience. Another thing that we see is poor HTML, and what I mean by that is people are not doing meta tags correctly, and those are titles and descriptions. And although they're not as important to SEO rankings, the meta description is really important, because if someone gets to the search ranking or the results page and you have a great description with a call to action, they may pick your listing over another listing just because of that meta description. And if you're not writing a meta description, Google is just going to use some of the content on your page, and that's going to be the description. So make sure that you're doing meta descriptions and good titles. Another thing that we see too is that people are not optimizing images and videos as well as they could. Some people are actually using the file name that's generated out of their camera rather than using a keyword-rich name that's relevant to the content and the title of the page that the images are on. We see that same thing with videos. So make sure that you're optimizing your images and your video as well. Another thing that we see as a problem is bad backlinks or not enough backlinks. And bad backlinks were actually really prevalent 3 or 4 years ago before Penguin. And a bad backlink is actually from a domain that has low authority, and the content on that website isn't relevant to what your website is all about. So if you have links in your backlink portfolio like that, you want to reach out to the webmaster and ask them to take that link down. And if you can't contact the webmaster, you might want to include those links in a disavow file and upload that to Google. And not having enough backlinks is also a problem because backlinks are still the coin of the realm, and the more backlinks that you have from high domain authority and relevant sites, the more that's going to help you in your search engine ranking results. Another thing that we see as a problem is thin content. And thin content is content that's about 300 words or less. That in and of itself is not the problem, because oftentimes you can cover a subject in a very detailed way in 300 or 400 words. It's when most of the content on your website is thin where you run into problems. And the Panda update is what addressed that. So if you have a propensity of thin content on your site, you might want to think about doing some rich and complex content to kind of balance that out. So thin content is one of the things that we see too. And then finally, if your site isn't mobile friendly, that is going to continue to be more and more of a problem for you. One of the things that I do in my daily course of business here at Vertical Measures is I look at people's websites. And one of the things that I've seen in terms of a trend over the last 12 to 18 months is a dramatic increase in mobile and tablet traffic. And in some cases, I'm seeing clients and prospective clients that have mobile and tablet traffic in the 60 to 80%. So desktop traffic is waning, and people are just using their phones more and more. I mean, the screens on phones are getting great big, and it's easy for them to do business and to order things and services off of their phone, whereas 2 or 3 years ago, it wasn't quite that way. So make sure that your website is mobile friendly. If you want to learn more about SEO, we have a 101 and a 202 series at Vertical Measures. And if you do verticalmeasures.com/resources/SEO, you can actually download any of these SEO teachings and learnings and really learn how to better address some of the issues on your website and to improve your overall SEO. Another problem that we see is you're afraid to publish the best content. Oftentimes when we're talking to clients and prospective clients, we reach a hesitation with them when we start talking about price and problems. They're afraid to actually put price content on their website. They don't want their prices to be known, or maybe they're uncomfortable in terms of writing about the price itself. And if you're a retailer, pretty simply you have to put a price out there because people are going to be shopping on Amazon and eBay and some of the larger e-commerce sites, so you've got to compete in that threshold. But for us, for example, how much does a content strategy cost? Well, I can't really answer that question in great detail, but I can talk about some of the variables and some of the things that are associated with creating a price about a content marketing strategy. So what we always want to do is publish as much content as we can to give people the information that they need to answer their questions and solve their problems. And really, when you think about it, these are the 6 areas that we cover the most in terms of content marketing. So cost and price is really important. One of the most influential content marketing pieces that's ever been published is how much does a fiberglass pool cost? And that was done by River Pools. and that actual piece of content is generated well over $2 million. You can't answer that question because a fiberglass pool comes in a lot of different sizes and shapes, and the backyards are different, so you can't really quote a price, but you can talk about how the price quote can actually be built. Another thing to talk about is problems or issues. If you have problems within your space, and if there's issues, you should write about those, because the people are on your website reading about it, and they realize that you're totally transparent in terms of talking about problems associated with your industry. Make sure you're doing versus content. So as I mentioned earlier, Lexus versus BMW, Toyota versus Ford, there's a lot of different things that people are doing online in terms of trying to make a decision, and those decisions are this versus that. So make sure that you've got a lot of versus or comparisons. People like reviews. One of the first things they're going to do once they decide that you might be someone they would buy from, they're going to look for reviews to find out what other people thought about you and what their experiences they had. The best and top, the best 5, the top 3, people like those kinds of lists because I think we're generally lazy, and we want someone else to compile that list for us, but it makes it easy for us to look at you versus some of the other top people in the industry or people selling your services. And then resource pages, those are things that support the industry or the service or the products that you're selling, and it's just a lot of different places that people can go to learn more about what those products and services can do for them. So make sure you're writing these kinds of content. And then finally, the number 1 is ideation gone awry. And what we've discovered is a lot of companies are writing content for content's sake, and they're not doing the homework and the research that they need to write the right kind of titles and to write the right kind of content that's going to resonate not only with their audience, but with the search engines. So where do we start? We actually start with our staff, because they have immediate contact with your prospective customers and with your actual customers. And they run into the same questions every day, all the time. And if you're not answering those questions online, your competition is. So make sure that you're asking your staff and you're compiling questions based on their daily experiences. Another thing that we use is Google Suggest, and I'm sure that you've done searches on Google where you've started to type and it does that autofill, that autocomplete. So in this example, how much does, and then below that, Google filled in, how much does Tom Brady make? How much does a blue whale weigh? Those are the kinds of things that we look for, because these are things that people are actually searching for out there, and they're doing enough searches for it to come up and to show in this Google Suggest. So best wireless speakers, best wireless security, surround sound security system, corporate security, jobs Arizona, and specialist salary. And then this last example, it says hiking boots versus with the asterisk. That's a wild card, so that will give you a lot of different things that follow up underneath that autocomplete. You can also do these same searches on mobile to see what people are searching on mobile as well. So this gives you some of the keyword phrases. This gives you some of the ideas of what people are actually searching for in and around your products and services. We also use keywordtool.io. It comes in a free version and also a paid version. But it allows you to filter results, and it pulls those results from the Google API, but it also can give you results from YouTube, from Bing, from Amazon, and from the App Store as well. Another tool that we use is Moz. And the Moz keyword tool has actually gotten a lot better in the last 6 months or so. They've been doing a lot of work on that. But you can filter this in a number of different ways, and it's actually becoming one of our favorite tools to use. But really what you're trying to do now is you're trying to get a list of keyword phrases. You're trying to understand better what people are searching for in and around your products and services. And from there, this is the next step, and it's one of the crucial things that we do, and it will actually help you write better content and content that actually is going to get ranked. So in this example on the left-hand side, we did a search for holiday charitable giving. And if you look at some of the autofills below that, the holiday charitable giving ideas, is one of the ones that we liked. So in the image on the right-hand side, you can see that we actually did that search, holiday charitable giving ideas as the search. And now here's the important part. As we look at the articles that are ranking in the exact titles that they're ranking, we don't see that. We don't see holiday charitable giving ideas. So we know that people are searching for it. We know that that's something that we want to focus some content on, but we've also noticed that no one is doing that exact title and that exact focus for content. So that shows us that that's a good topic to write about. And one of the things that I want you to understand too is as you're looking for keyword phrases, you're going to come across the number of searches or estimated searches per month with those keyword phrases. Don't worry so much about those numbers that you're seeing. Don't keep that low number from you writing a piece of content. So for example, waterfall versus agile, that keyword estimate was 1,600 searches a month, but the actual piece of content's gotten over 93,000 views. And then Java versus .NET, the search volume estimate was 300. That piece of content got over 71,000 views. And then one more, what is BiPAP therapy? The difference between BiPAP and CPAP, that keyword phrase is 1,300 estimated searches per month, got over 87,000 views of that particular piece of content. So use those tools as I described, use the Google search results, and write content in and around that, and you should see some really great results as well. One of the things that you can also do is go to Vertical Measures /ideation and listen to Arnie Ken, who is our founder and CEO, walk you through a 45-minute video on what I just described in 5 minutes, but he goes in depth and discusses it richly so you'll better understand it and you'll have some key takeaways that will really help you in terms of creating great content. And then just a couple of examples. It doesn't really matter how big or small you are. If you do content marketing correctly, it will have dramatic impact for your website. Alaska Sleep Clinic, just to give you some examples, they wrote, "Why am I so tired all the time, even after a full night's sleep?" 154,000 views of that piece of content. What is BiPAP therapy? 86,000 views of that particular piece of content. This is what their traffic looks like since 2014. So right now, they're at about 80,000 users per month or visits per month. And you can see that it's taken them some time to grow that traffic. And remember, content marketing is not a tactic or a quick fix. It takes time. Another thing, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. And for example, waterfall versus agile, it's kind of a narrow piece of content, something that programmers and developers would read. That piece of content got 92,000, almost 93,000 views. .NET versus Java, almost 71,000 views. So it doesn't really matter what industry you're in or how big or small your company is. And this is an example of their traffic pattern. So over the course of a year and a half, they're at 60,000 visits per month. This is our own client, and since March of 2016, their organic traffic is up 240%, and leads are up 221%. And it's all because they started publishing content on a weekly basis. And then one more example, how much does real content marketing cost? Remember, this is a cost piece of content. This is actually something that we had on our website for quite some time, and we freshened it. And one of the things we did when we freshened it is the subheaders, we changed those into questions. So how much does content research cost, strategy, promotion, education and workshops, optimization and development cost? So we changed those to questions. On the right-hand side, if you type in those questions, they rank number 1, number 9, and number 12. So part of it is understanding what it is that your users are interested in, but also understanding what they're searching for and then delivering that kind of content in search, and you'll have those kinds of results. So in summary, make sure your whole company has bought into content marketing and they truly understand what it is and what the drivers are. Make sure you have a documented but agile content marketing strategy, and make sure that you're creating content that people are actually searching for. Make sure you use those ideation things that I had talked about. And don't skip that ideation step because it's one of the most important. And what we do know is that companies that truly understand these principles, they're the ones that are doing incredible things online.
Thank you, Mike. I think we've got a couple questions, if you don't mind. And if anyone has any further
Sure.
questions based on the presentation, then pop them into the webinar interface now and I'll grab them, or tweet us with webinar. So the first question kind of goes back all the way to your beginning pitfall that you talked about with executives. We have a question that said, how can you get executives who are often subject matter experts to create content for you when they don't have a lot of time? Do you have any recommended strategies?
One of the things that you might want to do is actually do an interview with that executive. So even though they're spending a few minutes of their time, they're not actually creating that piece of content. You are, but you're taking their subject matter expertise, saving them time, but actually being able to deploy that information on the site. Most C-suite folks are really, really busy. Another way to do it is to give them a longer term deadline with some reminders. But if you're able to convince the C-suite that content marketing is the right thing to do, I think that you'll have better luck in terms of having them write content for you. But those are a couple of quick examples, and you might even just do a video interview as well. So it makes it easy on the person who's actually creating the content, and it's just really quick for both the creator and for the C-suite person.
Yeah, I like the video idea. And I know in the past for myself, I've even had someone record themselves and then I've transcribed their recording and turned that into a written piece of content. And it took him 5 minutes to do, but it was better than him sitting down and writing it all out. So that was another idea that I had as well.
Awesome.
Another question about the keyword volume slide. They said, I understand that we shouldn't use those numbers for every decision we make, but when do we use those in our decision to decide if there's a content piece worth the ROI? So maybe you could speak more on when do you use them? Do you just completely not pay attention to them, or are they still valuable?
I think you can use them as a gauge, but what we found is that they're really pretty unreliable in terms of that search volume. So I think maybe the better thing to think about is, as you're using those tools and you're using Google Suggest, is that exact phrase coming up? Are other people covering that, but maybe not with the exact same title? Are those key priority keywords within your organization? And if they are, I would argue that you still need to write about those even if the indicators in terms of traffic are really low. Because if they're priority keywords and you know that they're drivers within your business, and you also know that people are actually searching for an exact title, I would write that content and not totally dismiss the volume in terms of the keyword searches, but certainly I think those other elements are more important. And you can see these are proved out here on this slide. Waterfall versus Agile with 16 searches per month and having over 93,000 views. So yeah, I think you have to discount them to a certain degree.
And then going back to the idea of cost, you mentioned the example of how much does a content strategy cost and how you couldn't really answer that with a number since there's so many variables. So how do you create a piece of content on that without naming a number? How did you do that?
Well, actually, this is a good way to illustrate that. So the title of this piece was, how much does real content marketing cost? So those are questions that we know people are actually asking. But what we did is we wrote about some of the things that are part and parcel of that content marketing, which is research and strategy, promotion, optimization, and development. So what we did is we talked about the variables that make up the cost in and of itself, and then we invite people to contact us for more information. So really what we've done is we said, we can't really answer that question because it depends. You know, do you have a large enterprise website where you're getting multiple hundreds of thousands of visitors per month? Do you have a small site that you've just created? So with those variables, it's really difficult to say that here's a blanket cost of what content marketing costs. So I think that if you illustrate all the variables, you can kind of cover everything that you need to without actually giving a specific cost.
And we have another question about personas. Where does that come into play? Is that done in the ideation step, or should that be part of your strategy and always evolving?
I think that you want to create that as you're doing your strategy, because if you're already in the ideation phase, that's a little bit too late, because part of that ideation is going to revolve around the personas that you've created. So you have to know who your audience is before you actually start to create that content. And the personas will actually dictate who you're going to target, where they are in the buyer's journey, demographics, all those different things of their makeup. And that really comes as part of the strategy before you get to that ideation phase.
And then one last question, it looks like, unless anyone else sends another, about influencers. So you mentioned that as part of promotion. So do you have any recommended strategies on how to reach out and start relationships with influencers if you don't know them at all?
Well, I think part of it is actually starting a relationship with them via their social media channels where they're posting. So for example, if they're talking about something that's related to you and your business, you might want to make comments on that, and then just let them know that you're out there, and then slowly develop over time an online relationship. Because if you approach someone cold about sharing your content, typically they're not going to do that because they don't know who you are, and typically they're busy and they're not going to have a chance to read your content. But if you've actually developed a relationship over time by reaching out to them, you know, commenting on the content that they're writing, that's a really good place to start.
And then I did get another question in regards to keyword research. They asked, if you use HubSpot, what difference does it make using Moz? Which I think those are two different platforms. And we don't use HubSpot for keyword research. We would just use that for analytics. But maybe you can speak to how we use Moz for keyword research.
Yeah, actually their keyword tool is has been improved, as I mentioned. And really what you want to do is you want to start with your core keyword phrases, and what Moz will do is build on that. It will also give you questions that people are asking. Moz allows you to filter and also to do to output to Excel, so you can manage the keywords there as well. So it's just turning out to be a really good tool for us. And as you mentioned, Quinn, is totally different than what HubSpot is. It's you know, apples and oranges.
Yeah, because HubSpot is really for existing efforts to measure the effects of that, and then the keyword research would happen in Moz before you even create the content. So, well, cool. I think that's all the questions we have, but if anything comes up after this webinar, feel free to let us know. I know we have a lot of slides here, and we'll make sure to send out an email tomorrow so you get the recording and the slides and can review. So thank you, Mike, for being with us here today and for sharing your knowledge with us.
You're welcome.
And
thanks, everyone.
Yeah, if you want to download this book, it's at vert.ms/cmworks, and it goes into more detail on all of this information. So thanks, everyone, and have a great day.